Hello everyone, welcome to this first lecture of Data Science Studio, where we are going to talk about some of the key aspects which are actually required for you to transition your career to data science. And in that regard, the first and foremost thing which you have to understand is that data science is an interdisciplinary field. So data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses maths, that uses statistics, it uses programming to extract and visualize insights from raw data. So when we talk about raw data, it is the data which is not yet processed, and it has applications in multiple domains. So it could be your retail domain, it could be your tech domain. So it has applications onto multiple domains, and there are various ways in which you can extract insights from your data. Insights, or you can say key findings. And we will talk about, as we progress down the course, we'll talk about all those different things in terms of insights and how we can develop models out of it. Now, before moving into details of everything, first of all, you have to understand that if you are a completely beginner to data science, it is a slightly time consuming process. You have to put in good amount of efforts. You have to actually read through many videos which we will be posting, and then you can successfully complete some projects and you can transition your career to data science. So first of all, you have to understand these three components, which is data, maths and programming, because these three components are the backbone of any kind of project which you will be solving, either in the space of data science or in the space of data analyst. Now we will talk about what is data. In terms of data, so data is nothing but your facts and your information. So data is your fact and information, and when facts and informations are stored in a systematic way, then we call it as a data. And data has many types. Basically, the data is classified into two types. We'll be discussing this in detail in future sessions as well, but for now, data is of two types. One is your qualitative data and another is your quantitative data. So when we talk about data, it is of two types. One is qualitative. Qualitative data is basically a data which is in the form of categories. For example, if you have something called as gender and if you have city, this all are qualitative data. Quantitative data is data in the numeric format. Data in the numeric format. So now, first of all, you have to understand that what is the data which you are currently working with. So it could be qualitative data, it could be quantitative data, but when we are talking about classification of data, so data is mainly classified into four types. First is your nominal, and then it is your ordinal, and then you have discrete, and then you have continuous. So data, again, data is of two types, qualitative and quantitative, but it is classified into four types, which is nominal, ordinal, discrete and continuous. So first of all, you have to understand, when you are getting any data, you have to classify it into whether it is a what type it is, whether it is a qualitative or quantitative, and what classification it is falling into. So that is from the perspective of data. So I'll just rub it off. So now you should be very clear in terms of how the data what are different types of data available. So let me just so now we have to understand that if you are getting any data, so what kind of data is it? Is it in like 500 MB or is it like 500 GB? In today's scenario, data science field is evolving a lot, and gone are the days when we are working with an Excel file or when we are working with a small set of data. That is good from the practice sake, but from the implement perspective, most of the organizations are actually working with big data, which is very big in size. And how do you define a big data? So when we are talking about big data, it is defined by the concept of 3 V's, which is you have a lot of variety in your data, and you have volume and velocity. So variety means you have many features in the data, which is your number of variables in the data set. Volume is the size of your data, which is the number of observations in the data set. Velocity is how frequent your data is getting updated. So this big data is actually in the format of petabytes or exabytes. So when we are having sessions on big data, then we'll be discussing this in very detail, but you should be very clear that when you are talking about data, first of all, it is of two types, qualitative or quantitative, and then it is classified into 4 types: nominal, ordinal, interval, and discrete and continuous. And then you have big data. Now big data again can be classified by the concept of 3 V's. Now there is another type of data which is another classification of data, which is called as structured data, and it is also called as unstructured data, and then we have also called as semi-structured data. So if you are talking about structured, this data is basically in your tabular format. It has predefined number of rows and columns, and data is structured in a tabular format, which now the CSV file or the Excel file which you are using, that is actually your structured data. Now what is unstructured data? Unstructured data is that data which is not in a tabular format. It could be in a semi, it is a kind of format which is not structured at all. It could be like your photo, it is a unstructured data. It could be like a video file, that is also unstructured data, and it could be your any kind of document. Next thing is, what is semi-structured? So if you have something called as JSON file or XML file, these are JSON is, for example, is a semi-structured data where the data is stored in the format of key value pair, and you have to read a JSON file and you have to extract data. So whenever you are talking about a field of data science or data analytics, first and foremost you have to understand what kind of data you will be working with. So again, I'll revise. Data is of two types. It could be qualitative data, it could be quantitative data. Within that, your data can be structured, unstructured, semi-structured, and if the data is very big in size, then it is normally called as big data. So now you should be very clear that what is meant by what is the from the beginner perspective. You should be very clear what are different ways in which your data is stored. So we'll be talking in all details about the different tools, techniques, or the things, programming, everything we'll be using in our future sessions. So this is just an introductory session to make you aware about these three concepts. Now when we're talking about the math and statistics, so one thing which you should be very clear In maths, which we'll be talking about is the concepts of linear algebra. So let me just activate the pen. So one thing which you have to be very clear is a concept of linear algebra. And then you also have to be understood of concepts of statistics. So statistics and linear algebra both formulate the backbones of your machine learning project. So if you are becoming a data, even if you are want to, instead of data science, you want to move into data analytics industry, but you should be aware of some of the concepts of math and statistics, because that is where then you will be able to find some good insights or findings. So now within linear algebra, we will be talking about in our future sessions some of the linear functions, and we will be also talking about a basic calculus, and we will also be talking about some concepts of differentiation. We must have studied, if you have maths in 12th, you must have studied everything. Within statistics, some of the concepts are very important, which is probability, and you have hypothesis testing, and you also have some other concepts which are from algorithm perspective. You have regression algorithm, you have logistic regression algorithm, what is the math behind it, and you have also something called as random forest. So all those algorithms we will be discussing in our statistics session. So now you should be able to formulate a, you can say, a understanding. If you want to switch to a data science career, you should understand what all the different kinds of data sets which are available in the market or with the companies, and you also have to be aware about the different maths and statistics concepts that can be applied on top of the data. Now you have data, you have the knowledge in math and statistics, but how you will work with data? So to work with data, you should be very clear of some of the programming languages. In current scenario, when we are talking about like good models having the data size is not very big, we can go with Python language. Okay, and within Python, we will be talking about, we'll be having a session on data structures and algorithms. We'll be having a session on the different data types, different data structures, how you can work around in the Python. So we'll have lot of sessions on this one. And there is another language which you should be aware about right now, which is very popular language, which is a PySpark. You should be very much comfortable with Python and PySpark, because if you are working with big data, so PySpark is actually the Python API. Python API for Apache Spark. So PySpark is the Python API for Apache Spark. And what is Apache Spark? Apache Spark is an open source distributed computing framework for big data processing. So again, Apache Spark is actually an open source distributed computing framework for big data processing. Again, PySpark is used for mainly big data processing. Keep in mind, not Python. If you are working with Python, which is very big data, which is petabyte or exabyte, you might struggle with the code itself. So that's why PySpark is used, and for that, on that behalf, I'll just make some space over here. Just give me a sec. Now, next thing is, now most of the time some of the times you have also worked with the databases. So many organizations have their database in the cloud environment. So you should be very comfortable with SQL, and in our course we will be giving a very detailed session on MySQL. So MySQL is actually a relational database management system developed by Oracle and is based on structured query language, and it is free and open source. So now you should be very comfortable with the kind of overall project we'll be covering, because this is a free course and it is very detailed. Each and everything will be discussed in all the sessions, and when we are talking about math and statistics, it will be a completely based on your Python. When we are talking about data, we will be working with CSV files, we will be working with Parquet based files, we will be working with JSON files. Because of course big data we might not be working with too much, but I will give you a very much overview of how you can work with big data using PySpark. From programming perspective, from career switching perspective, you should start with Python, you should start with MySQL. Once you have built a good amount of understanding of working with Python and SQL on your different sets of data, then we move to PySpark. So we will start with our Python, then we will start with our MySQL, and then third we will start with your machine learning or data science. So in next lecture I will probably show you how the whole skeleton will look like, but it will be a very big course which will span around 100 sessions at least, which will cover everything. Now this is from the perspective of the data, the project which you should be, the techniques which you should be aware of. But nowadays things have evolved so much that even if you are a beginner, the expectation is slightly high. So in terms of data analytics and data industry, so if you are talking about data analytics or a data science career, I'll be discussing in our next session what is the difference between the two. But you should also be aware of one visualization tool. So you should be also aware of one visualization tool. And right now there is one free open source which is available, is Power BI. So we'll be having couple of sessions on Power BI, how you can create data models, how you can create visualizations. So Power BI is actually provides different ways to analyze your data, and it is also a self-service analytic tool. By self-service analytic tool means everything is automated over here. You just need to be aware about basic SQL queries, should be aware about the functionalities of the Power BI, and you can get started from the data analytics industry. Data analytics industry, data science industry, I'll be talking in my next lecture. What is the difference between data scientist, data analyst, machine learning engineer? We'll be having those discussion as well. But in your bucket, you should have, in your resume at least, you should have Python, you should have PySpark, you should have Power BI, and you should have either MySQL or you should have SQL. If you have these very good understanding of these four different platforms, then it is very easy to switch to a data science or data analytics industry. Now when you have good understanding about the maths and statistics, then it is where the machine learning part will come, that will help you to excel in the data science industry. Apart from this, in the current industry trends, you should be also, now this is from the entry perspective, that you should be also aware about all these concepts, but industry is evolving very fast, and you have to learn many things to make a successful career in data analytics or data science. Now, if you talk about industry in together, there is a concept called as cloud computing. So recently I have cleared 3 certificates from Azure, which is Azure Certified Data Scientist and Azure Certified Data Engineer. Now, without covering your different bases, you cannot proceed with these certifications, because you should be aware about PySpark, you should be aware about SQL, you should be aware about Python. Now, what is cloud computing? So cloud computing is very evolving field right now. During the pandemic stage, most of the organizations have actually moved to cloud computing to save cost and to increase their efficiencies. So we will be having a complete course dedicated to cloud computing, where I'll be using Azure as the platform. And I will also help you how you can get certifications like data scientist and data engineer to excel on your career. So this is a very vast course. It is first of its kind in the channel, which is completely free, and I will be giving you multiple projects as well. So share it with your friends. Please subscribe the channel, like it, and provide your valuable comment so that we can improve on it. And next session will be posted soon, and please stay tuned for the next sessions. Thank you and have a good day.